Top of the morning to ya. Let's go straight over to Ireland and get ourselves a bag of Kettama, shall we, lads? Let's get into it. Alright, let's run it from the top.
My boy, he ain't up to much. My boy, he ain't into love. My boy, he don't get all dressed up. He don't get second glance.
Alright, let's run through it. We're going to start on these chords because I have just discovered Granulator. I've never really used it before. It's a really cool way of making synths that are a little bit different. And if you ever get stuck creating your own serum presets, something like Granulator is a really interesting way of creating leads and chords because you can just put any sample in there, whether it's a one shot or a loop or whatever, and you can just take little one shots and make your own thing from other samples. The original sample that I used in this is this sample here, which is just a little vocal shot. And if I take these off, this is what that sounds like with all the processing. I've just dragged that into Granulator 3, which you can get free on the Ableton website. And I've got some reverb and some distortion and some compression and some delay. So all of that together. So that's just using this first one shot from these 3 hits in that sample. Another thing that I discovered recently is this expressive chords. Again, you can download that free from Ableton's website. So I've used this expressive chords, which is sort of like a chord trigger. So you only have to play one note in your piano roll and you don't have to actually write the chords out yourself. It's sort of generates the chords for you. So I've got this expressive chords on there and I've put a scale on it because these expressive chords don't always fit in the same scale. So with those expressive chords on, slightly goes out of key, so I'm putting F minor in there. So once it generates those chords, after that it pulls them into F minor, so it makes sure that everything's really tight. And you can do some really cool stuff with this expressive chords. You can do a little strum. And you can invert them so the lower notes are higher or the higher notes are lower. So it still plays the same chords, just different octaves depending on the note. So it's a really cool thing to play around with if you ever struggle to write chords. And as soon as I did that, it sounded instantly like a Kettama synth. So I thought I had to do a Kettama tune. So to make those vocals a little bit more spacey, because there's not much going on in this intro and the build, so I put some effects on the vocals just to fill out the space. So I've got a little bit of saturator on there. I've got an RVOC, which is just compressing it. I've got this Valhalla delay, which is doing 4th notes on the left and 8th dotted notes on the right. So having those 2 different times of the delay really helps to make it a bit spacey and super wide.
All dressed up. He don't get sex.
And then we've just got a vintage verb on there as well. And then going into the drop, I have made this vocal riser. So this last word here, I just dragged that into a sampler. So what I've done is I put an arpeggiator on there and I've made the style chord trigger. So it means it's just going to repeat depending on the rate that you've set it at. So at the start, we have it 1/4, and then I've slowly automated the time so it increases as time goes on. So start on 1/4, go to 1/8, 1/12, and then 1/16. And then just to open it up a little bit, I've got an endless smile at the end. And then we've got an auto pan on there, just kicking it left and right. So it makes it a little bit more interesting. Then we have this little break going into the drop. The drums are pretty simple. It's just a 909 kick, a clap, a 909 clap, and then we have our hat on the offbeat. Again, 909 hat. And then we have this ghost hat, which is off grid, so it's hitting here, so you get a real swing. If you had it on grid, it would sound a little bit flat. So when you push it behind the beat just a little bit, it feels much more skippy and gives it much more energy. And we've done a similar thing with these ghost snares as well. Again, they're sort of behind the beat, so if they were on beat and slightly off, makes them feel much, much more skippy. And I've got some top loops on there and some crashes, and all together they sound like this. Our bass is quite a typical garagey sounding Reese. So 2 oscillators, as I normally do, 1 fine-tuned up, 1 fine-tuned down, an equal amount. And then I've got a couple of filters on there, this band reject, and then we've got a comb filter as well. And then I've got a load of processing on here to create a lot of movement. So we have this LFO, which is affecting the frequency of this equalizer. That's sort of opening up a little bit, so it gives it a bit more movement. And then this LFO3 is affecting this filter here. So that moves along when the note's being played. Again, creates a lot of movement. As usual, we've got quite a bit of distortion. We've got one on the end here as a soft clip, and then one at the beginning, which is diode 2. And to make the bass and the kick fit well together, I've taken the length of the kick down a little bit. So we're just shaving off that last little bit. And then we can see on the kick start the relationship between the kick and the bass. We're really carving out pretty much the length of the kick, so the bass gets right out of the way for the kick. So they have enough space to both exist harmoniously. Then we have these little vocal bits peppered in. Just as little background bits. You don't really hear them as lead vocals because they're so washed out. I've got a lot of reverb on there, and we've got this endless smile pretty much on 100%. So it's really washy, it really sits in the background, but it's just there to sort of fill the space a little bit. And then this synth here, which is that sort of classic beat that Kettama uses in Yosemite, it is just 2 saw waves, slightly down-tuned, 1 slightly up-tuned. And then we've got a bit of distortion on there, a bit of hyperdimension, and a bit of reverb, and that is literally it. So if we didn't down-tune both of those oscillators, it would sound quite flat, almost sort of trancey sounding. So just separating those two off a little bit just gives it that gritty kind of sound. And there we have it. Thank you very much for watching, and I do hope it's helped. Love to your mothers.